everyone, Random Attribute 20K here. I know I'm slaving away at the big ol' project right now, but something popped up in my feed. Something about how a YouTuber being wrong about Godzilla of all things. When I clicked on the video they were responding to, I just knew I had to make a response video of my own. For some background, I'm a huge Godzilla fan. The first Godzilla media I ever touched was Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee for the GameCube. Though over the years I had other interests take place, I still got a soft spot for Goji, somewhere in my heart. With that said, man, the fan base is like Nintendo fans in the film community. You think Marvel fans and their blind consumerism is bad? Think again. So when I saw response videos on this, I knew I had to trash their opinions immediately and have a take that they might not like. With that said, let's get to it.
Godzilla is so popular that a lot of people didn't even know that it originated in Japan.
So, this is wrong. Or is it? Skipper poorly articulated an otherwise true statement. He's talking about the Raymond Burr version of the film, plain and simple. But what about that other part, where he said people didn't know? Well, unless if you were a fan, you thought that this was the original version. I should know since my family thought it was the original, even my grandma who was alive when the first movie dropped in theaters. To be very clear, I am Japanese American, but my great-grandparents and my grandma didn't take a trip to Japan until the 60s or 70s, way after the film was in circulation and way before it would enter the home movie market.
Yes, the first, because 1998 never happened.
No. You are not dissing this masterpiece. You think I'm joking? Oh, I'll elaborate later. Just you wait.
I don't have any nostalgia for the old Godzilla movies. Yeah, I still watched them a bit when I was a kid.
Hey man, same here. I watched 1998 when I was a kid and I hated it. I spread awareness like gospel in the 6th grade. I didn't get around to watching any more than 1998 until the 8th grade. Oh, Suncoast, my beloved.
So no bias. 98% of them suck ass. Godzilla's look was more fascinating to shareholders and executives than the original intentions and creativity that made him even exist in the first place.
Yes! That first part, yes. I know it sounds like I'm simping, but yes, unfortunately the Showa era is what my dad and his siblings watched as kids as simple, mindless entertainment. However, I have to call out that Skipper's analysis is another poor articulation of an otherwise true statement. This executive decision happened in the domestic market, not for foreign executives. Though I'm willing to believe that the situation in getting Godzilla over here in the States was probably similar to what Frank Ward had to go through. If you want a little bit more on what he had to go through, watch this video if you would be so inclined to. Back on topic, and to provide some context, Toho found out that their Godzilla films were popular with the little kids, so they decided to shit out a bunch of Godzilla movies meant for children, until Gamera beat their asses for a fraction of the cost. To save some time, he makes a critical error, skipping over the Showa era's end and subsequent hiatus, then the second attempt to making Godzilla popular to a new generation with the creation of the Heisei era films, which coincides with the creation of the film that should not be acknowledged. Actually, he does not make any distinction between eras at all and goes straight to America's second attempt at adapting Godzilla. He doesn't even mention the Millennium era. Oops.
We got a serious Godzilla, then people complained that it was too serious with not enough Godzilla, so the franchise became Looney Tunes.
Yet again, another poorly articulated argument with some truth to it. Skipper, as far as I know, is reflecting how critics receive these movies. If he meant to reflect fan reaction, maybe the loud minority hated the lack of Godzilla in 2014, but it was universally praised because at least it wasn't 1998. Fans also really love the sequels, just not me.
And now Japan has gone back to reset that cycle, and from ground zero, we got a breath of fresh air again.
Wrong. Damn, are we really forgetting one of the best Goji films of all time? If you didn't know, Shin Godzilla was released between 2014 and King of the Monsters. Then there was the TV series, and that one was released between King of Monsters and Versus Kong. Bottom line is that they were never being competitive in the first place. Hell, when 1998 released, Toho wanted to wait on more projects until it finished its trilogy. Of course, it never happened, but they were quite mutual in terms of releasing stuff in order to not confuse people. Nowadays, the film landscape is so different, and with a critical reception of the MonsterVerse, they probably thought, we'll just make our own movies again. It's not like they'll get a legitimate movie release here, which I know. fans. I am not talking about you. I am talking about the average Joe who will only have exposure to Godzilla in AMC and Cinemark and Regal. They're not gonna go to like some foreign film special theater to go see an overseas Godzilla film. Why would they do that? That's just how Joe Schmo works. I'm sorry. Like, good for you if you were like me and saw Shin Godzilla in a special foreign film theater. Now, the historical segment was fine for the most part. I do not like, however, how in the timeline from 46 to 54, they didn't really mention the reason why the bomb dropped in Bikini Atoll, which, spoiler alert, was because of a series of nuclear bomb tests that was common post-war because something about the nuclear arms race and communists and whatnot. I don't know, it's a confusing mess. The bomb also didn't catch up to the fishermen. If I recall correctly, they were in the area and nobody warned them to stay away. I think a better way to articulate this is, be a little dramatic. Like, one day, the boat arrived back to shore, arriving with the sick and dying, and then listing out what happened. It probably would have flowed a little better.
And this controversy pushed Toho producer Tomoyaki Tanaka to want to make a political film related to nuclear war.
Wrong, but kind of right? The incident was a driving factor, but it was not the smoking gun. It all began at a movie being canceled due to political tensions with another country in which the movie was set in, and on the plane back, another movie idea popped up. It was ultimately a combination of the success of monster films like Beasts of 20K Fathoms and King Kong, the Lucky Dragon No. 5 incident, and the fear of nuclear holocaust that Tanaka knew would make for a good film. How did you watch a good video on the development of 54, but reference it incorrectly?
Gojira is still objectively a war film that—
Okay, I know it's semantics, but it's technically a post-war film. Unless if you count the 56 version, but then you would have to clarify it as a Cold War film.
It's a masterpiece in world cinema and is not talked about enough due to it getting censored by the United States.
Okay, that's also wrong. Censorship? No. Localization? Absolutely. No one cared for foreign films, much less from our former enemy, Japan. Again, I encourage everyone to check out how execs perceived Japanese imports like anime in this interview conducted by Raymona. And to make it very clear, this was not done as if the US government commanded its censorship. It was just adapted by film execs who thought they had found a quick cash grab.
This is why Godzilla 2014 by Gareth Edwards is the best version of Godzilla in the States.
I mean, comparing to what this monsterverse became, I can see it, but I disagree. This is stupid unless if you interpret this movie as some sort of social commentary on how incompetent the military are. I mean, for starters, Bryan Cranston was only used for trailer material. There wasn't really a I'm gonna kill Goji attitude with Taylor's character. If anything, he was some dude that got the plot going. And look, mommy dinosaur? To say it is the most grounded or realistic is so dumb. Because why would they shoot when bullets don't make the monster flinch? This is why 1998 works so well. They make a Godzilla with their own rules. If it's a mutant lizard, then it's reasonable to think that bullets would be effective. Honestly, I'm thinking that Skipper is a little more rose-tinted here. It was technically his first movie, so it makes sense. As for me, even though I am speaking the gospel of 98 here, I don't look at it in the same way. If anything, the only thing I'm truly rose-tinted on is those Heisei-era films. I love you, Destroyer!
American Godzilla as a whole is an oxymoron thing to begin with, a thing made to represent America's atomic bomb on Japan. He's now instead Superman, where he gets recontextualized to be Superman. It's now going to be the savior to America against the Japanese threat that was forced out of hiding by humanity that then attacks Hawaii.
Wrong in the first half, but correct in the second, and then wrong again. To set the record, this was not an anti-American film. This was an anti-nuclear film. At the time, in the 50s, nuclear was a very sensitive topic in America. So to have this silly little monster be the bomb was absolutely ridiculous. At least, that was my interpretation of how execs saw it. But in 2014, to make him into a Superman of sorts? Yeah, I think that's right on point. The Japanese threat as Muto? Did we watch the same movie or something? Because I'm pretty sure it was Muto that found its way to a power plant years ago and caused a disaster. If anything, you could even interpret Muto's presence as the legacy of the occupation of Japan post-war, with the people covering up as the CIA, as the CIA being involved with the country's post-war development or something. And as crazy as it sounds, it would still work better than whatever he's going for. I'm surprised that he doesn't comment on Godzilla's appearance, which is supposed to be realistic or something. Man, I always hated this design, not because they made him chubby, or lost what made him Godzilla for the most part, but because he's supposed to look scary. Bro is built like a stuffed animal. Now, this is the part where I stopped reacting piece by piece to the video. For the rest of the video, he's gushing on -1, which is fine. The Japanese know their own product than us Americans. However, Skipper, Shin Godzilla, hello? It would have been better if he had compared 2014 to Shin Godzilla, since both of them have seen the original and wanted to, well, adapt the original as faithfully as possible. Obviously, one did leagues better than the other. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a great premise, that America can't adapt Godzilla. It's something I've felt for a while, since the average person that I have talked to that know of Godzilla know him as that giant monster in those shitty dub films that were usually the Showa era kind, the ones meant for a younger audience. Nobody really talks about the Heisei era films, which were more serious, and even if they did, they were in it for the monster fighting scenes, not so much the human element. And before those fans are typing in the comments, we're not talking about you. I'm talking about the greater public, like Joe Schmo. I should know, because whenever I talk to people like that, like my parents or my parents' siblings, they have the same exact perception of Godzilla, not as some 3D 5D movie, or stuff that has a deeper message. Just silly little mindless entertainment to shut up your kids. Now, I don't think 56 was solely to blame on Godzilla's modern reputation. Remember, at one point, old cartoons were meant for everyone, not just kids, and then one day it became solely for kids. And there's a great discussion to be had, but we're just gonna keep focusing on this video in particular. Skipper's heart is in the right place. It's just that there are some inaccuracies he didn't bother to look into, and his conclusions were on the right track, but just wrong. With that said, if he really wanted a true experience that made sense, 1998 is the go-to movie. Now, don't get me wrong, it is a terrible movie, but it sums up what America's perception of Godzilla is down to a T. Monster is born out of nuclear, raids a major metropolitan city, and then dies. It's a ridiculous premise, and the film didn't treat it as anything more than that. As said before, it has its own Godzilla with its own rules, which is why regular soldiers shooting regular bullets makes sense. It really is a fun movie, and I think it's time we should stop pretending it's not. I mean, are we really gonna say it's worse than the worst the Showa era had to offer? It really is no more fun than watching Final Wars, a movie that was insanely bad shit, but goddamn, I had a blast watching it. At the end of the day, I think it's time we should apologize to Dean Devlin and company. The fact that this is still hated simply because it's a bad Godzilla movie is ridiculous. And that's my piece. Now, if you excuse me, I'll be prepping the main course.
Obrigado.